The incredible story of a family locked in a New York City apartment, hidden from the outside world for more than a decade. The brothers are the subject of a new documentary called The Wolf Pack. And ABC's Elizabeth Vargas is here with more on this story. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Robin. Could you survive being locked in a tiny apartment for 14 years, perhaps even learn to thrive? 6 brothers and 1 sister did just that. Some of them born, all of them raised, living in a tenement. They and their mother captives. This is the story of family, fortitude, and the power of film. In the gritty chaos of the Lower East Side for more than a decade, behind these windows was an entire family almost no one knew existed. They are the Angulo family, Oscar and Suzanne, and their 7 children. Their neighbors never saw them.
Been here all my life. We didn't know they existed.
The children, raised in 4 small rooms, homeschooled their whole lives by their mother, and locked in by their father. For 14 years, they lived by his rules.
If he put us in a room, we have to stay there until he says you can go.
Oscar had the only key to the apartment, and only he could use it.
So this was always locked?
Always.
What did he exactly tell you? Did he say it was dangerous outside? What did he say would happen to you if you went outside?
He would say to us, so outside there's good people and there's bad people. You know, I'd like to keep you all here, protected, you know, because this is a big city. There's a lot of crime going on.
Their father gave them free rein to just one thing.
I don't shine shoes anymore.
Movies. They were the boys' only window to the outside world, losing themselves in the wilderness of The Last of the Mohicans, the streets of Sicily in Godfather, and the gritty New York underworld in Goodfellas. The films were more than entertainment. They were salvation.
Movies taught us, like, sort of how to speak to one another.
Who the hell else are you talking to me?
How you interact with another person, then have an opinion.
Marvin, what do you make of all this?
How many hours a day would you watch these movies?
All day.
A whole day?
Every day.
How many movies have you seen?
Let's just say over 10,000 movies.
You've seen over 10,000 movies?
Like, at least The Dark Knight, Pirates of the Caribbean, Blade Runner, Driver, Apocalypse Now, Citizen Kane, No Country for Old Men, Halloween, Gone with the Wind.
At some point, simply watching is not enough.
Mr. White.
The boys decide to become a part of the movies they love. In the confines of their tiny apartment, their imagination runs wild.
Every time my fingers touch brain, I'm super flying TNT.
With every line, every hand gesture, every expression memorized, they assign parts and perform. Their only audience is themselves. Scenes from Reservoir Dogs. Pulp Fiction.
Please look at me like that, right? I can feel your look.
Batman. Every punch choreographed. As for the neighbors they never saw,
We make up characters out of it. Like if we hear yelling or like loud music, we'd be like, that sounds a little bit like Goodfellas party. Maybe Robert De Niro was living in there. We just imagine a lot. Sort of what you miss out on, you make up in fantasy.
until one day fantasy becomes reality.
It's now or never.
When life inside became too much to bear, and one found the courage to break free.
I'm gonna do it now.
And a chance encounter with a woman who will change their lives.
It was like one kid, another kid, another kid, and all of a sudden it was 6 of them, and I ran after them.
That young woman, Crystal Mazel, would go on to change their life. She made the documentary The Wolf Pack, which debuts nationwide tonight. We're doing an hour-long special. It's an incredible story.
Where do we start?
Yeah,
all
I
the
know.
questions that
I
you
know.
have. What's their favorite movie?
I asked them that. It's an impossible question to answer. They have watched and memorized thousands and thousands and thousands of movies. They reenact scenes. They carefully make props out of garbage.
Are they going to use this and become, the next Steven Spielberg?
Well, most amazingly, one of the boys, we have videotape of him 5 years ago that Crystal took. She's teaching him how to use a camera, how to push record, what a tripod is. We have videotape of him today working as a cinematographer on an independent movie.
Would they memorize the lines to all these movies?
They wrote down all the scripts we have and they show them to me. It's pretty incredible, but even most amazing, as they're going out and rubbing elbows now with celebrities and getting all this fame, they still go back to that tiny tenement apartment. They all still live there except one son.
And to be so well-adjusted.
It's a testament to the power of imagination, the power of resilience, and family film.
It's an incredible story. You said it was
It's
shocking.
it's my favorite hour I've ever done.
That's a tease. And you'll see the full story on 2020 tonight with these two that are famous. Right over here.
Right here.
And
We're going to kick you 2 out.
The Wolfpack documentary opens in theaters nationwide today.
Yes,
right?
today.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Robin.
See you tonight at 10.
See you tonight. Be square. It's a New York City public housing development, home to some 800 people. I am a rare visitor to the apartment where the Angulo family lives.
Come on in.
21-year-old Mukunda invites me in, show me the home that was his prison for 14 years. The apartment is 1,000 square feet. The largest space is this living room.
That's like... It's 2 of me.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is small.
The apartment, home to 7 children and their mothers Suzanne and their father Oscar. He had the only key to the front door, and only he could use it.
So this always
always locked?
Oh, yeah.
His father blocked the door with a tall ladder to keep intruders out and his wife and children in.
And when you lift the ladder, it'd make a loud, like, so he would know if anyone was attempting to go out.
Oscar creates their own fortress of solitude. In these home videos, scenes of the strange world in which they lived. Part Hare Krishna, part paranoia, Oscar's own hermit kingdom.
So we had this idea of, like, having a big group, like our own community, our own race here. It's almost like a tribe that you have.
Vishnu is the first child and only daughter, born with a rare genetic disorder. A year later came Bhagavan, and a year later, fraternal twins, Govinda and Naranya.
Where did they get these names?
They're Sanskrit, from the Sanskrit language.
Mukunda was born next, and then the two youngest, Krishna and Jagadish. At night, the young boys slept with Suzanne, piled on top of each other on mattresses. During the day, releasing their pent-up energy, dancing, bouncing. Their entire childhood was schooled by their mother. For the 6 boys, recess was roller skating indoors, back and forth in that tiny hallway. But the most important lesson every day, Oscar's rules. Number 1, the boy's hair was never cut.
He always encouraged us to have long hair. When you have long hair, you are powerful. He was like, be a powerful person.
Rule number 2, stay inside.
What did he say would happen to you if you went outside?
He would say to us, so outside there's good people and there's bad people. And I would always explain, I'd like to keep you all here, protected.
Here, there were rules about what rooms they could enter. In the apartment, there's a kitchen, a bedroom, 2 bathrooms, and 3 more rooms. But as if 6 rooms for 9 people wasn't cramped enough, the children were forbidden from entering 2 of them. Mukunda says it stems from his father's fear. He banned the boys from rooms that shared walls with the neighbors.
He didn't want anyone to hear what we were doing, or that we were laughing, or he basically didn't want anyone to know we were here.
That's why even one of the 2 bathrooms was off limits.
We weren't allowed to use this one, only this one.
So we just sit empty?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody used it.
Nobody used it.
Naranya, one of the twins, says the restrictions were the most extreme for their mother.
She had the worst of it for all of us. She had more rules than we did. Any little thing that she did wrong she was like put on trial.
I was very much a frightened person. We all were. He would not treat her like a happy husband, a happy wife.
How did it come to this? Suzanne, who grew up in the farm fields of the Midwest, met Oscar in the exotic jungles of Peru, hiking to Machu Picchu.
He really thought and acted in a much bigger way than most people.
They married within months, living first in a Hare Krishna preserve, later in a van, having baby after baby. But when they ended up at the New York housing project, Oscar shut the door and pocketed the only key.
You didn't argue, no, this is silly, we're overreacting.
At that time, I didn't have a lot of control about the choices that I made or could make.
Suzanne had no contact with her family. Her sisters say she left no trail, no address, no phone number.
We just felt there was no way of knowing. How do we find out? We had to hire a detective. No one had seen her.
Suzanne was hiding in plain sight. Oscar didn't work, and the family survived on welfare and the money she earned from homeschooling. All her time was spent tending to her 7 children inside.
It must have been deeply painful to see your kids growing up
Well,
confined.
sometimes it was hard because I thought I wanted them to be out in the fresh air because that's what I did as a child.
The children's only view of the wonders of the world were through Suzanne's memories of the life she used to have.
When my children were younger, we would sit and look out the window and I could compare it to the view on a mountaintop. Those big buildings might be other mountains. It was kind of fun. It broke the monotony a little bit.
Oscar would grant rare outings with more rules. They were told where to look, how far to walk, and never to interact with strangers.
We'd go out in the summers mostly because it was nice out.
So how many times a year would you go out?
Sometimes one,
One?
and then 1 year, not at all. And then the winter came, and we never went out in the winter.
The only freedom Oscar did allow, what would become the boys' one true escape, was movies.
How many hours a day would you watch these movies?
All day,
A whole day?
every day.
How many movies have you seen?
Let's just say over 10,000 movies.
You've seen over 10,000
Like,
movies?
at least.
With no outside friends, no outside activities, it was total immersion and obsession.
If I didn't have movies, my life would be pretty boring. It makes me feel like I'm living, sort of, because it's kind of magical.
They were 6 brothers locked in a cramped apartment for 14 years. Their father gave them free rein to just one thing:
I don't shine shoes anymore.
movies. They were the boys' only window to the outside world, losing themselves in the wilderness of the last of the Mohicans. The streets of Sicily in The Godfather. And the gritty New York underworld in Goodfellas.
Remember about yourself, James Henry. You may fold under questioning.
The films were more than entertainment. They were salvation.
Movies taught us, like, sort of how to speak to one another, how you interact with another person, then have an opinion.
Marvin, what do you make of all this?
With hours, days, weeks, months, years to fill, they would watch their favorites again and again.
The Dark Knight, Pirates of the Caribbean,
Blade Runner, Taxi Driver, Apocalypse Now,
Citizen Kane, No Country for Old Men, Halloween, Gone with the Wind,
Sunset Boulevard, Thing.
At some point, simply watching is not enough.
Mr. White.
The boys decide to become a part of the movies they love. In the confines of their tiny apartment, their imagination runs wild.
Every time my fingers touch brain, I'm super fly TNT.
I kind of thought, why don't we do those films? Be those characters.
They painstakingly transcribe every word, spending weeks creating handwritten scripts, homemade costumes, and props.
Various bastards. How many scenes in the movie is this?
Well, this is a whole movie.
This is the whole movie?
Every word that is uttered in that movie.
And that's every word that's uttered in Pulp Fiction?
Yes.
Yes.
You've got to be kidding me.
With every line, every hand gesture, every expression memorized, they assign parts and perform. Their only audience is themselves. Scenes from Reservoir Dogs. From Pulp Fiction.
Don't be looking at me like that. Like, I can feel your look.
Batman. Every punch, choreographed. Mukunda is the main prop master, creating costumes from anything he can get his hands on.
We got an oxygen tank from No Country for Old Men. Inside, if you want to feel that, that is little Milo tin cans. It's like a Raisin Bran or a Quakers. And I would just tape it all together, get the shape, and just color all of it.
That's great.
When we do it, I have to get in the mind of the character, play Batman, because it's a responsibility, sort of. That sounds pathetic to some people, but to us and to our world, it is very personal.
Did you guys ever look out the windows at other people on the street and wonder what their lives were like?
It was kind of like, oh, look at that, that's a school bus, these kids are going to school, just like in the movies.
As for the neighbors they never saw,
We make up characters out of them. Like, if we hear yelling or, like, loud music, we'd be like, that sounds a little bit like Goodfellas partying. Maybe Robert De Niro was living in there. We just imagine a lot.
Sort of what you miss out on, you make up in fantasy.
for 14 years they are confined, from first teeth to first words, young boys becoming young men. As they grow, the 4 rooms they live in grow smaller. The claustrophobia becomes stifling.
It's scary to want to break out of that box.
Then, in 2009, their prison shrinks even further. Oscar, perhaps sensing his growing son's growing restlessness, covers the windows that winter with blankets, sealing off the one remaining link to the outside world.
When that was happening, we couldn't even get sunlight looking out the window. I started getting a little like, all right, enough is enough.
It is 2010. The tension in the tiny apartment has mounted.
It starts to reach like a volcano point where something is starting to erupt.
Mukunda's name means giver of freedom, and one morning he wakes up determined to seize his own.
It was a Saturday morning, and I just thought, you know what? I've got to do it today. It's now or never.
He waits for his father to leave the apartment to buy groceries.
I wouldn't dare do it when he was around.
He goes to his prop closet and selects a mask to hide his face. He is frightened his father will see him on the street. The mask he chooses, Michael Myers from the movie Halloween.
There's no way he would be able to recognize it as me.
Right.
And then, 15-year-old Mukunda opens the front door. Down the 16 flights of stairs. And out into the air.
The moment I opened the door, my heart pounded so hard. I was like,
Outside, without his father, for the first time in his life.
what do? I'm out in the open. It's all out there. There's no going back now.
He doesn't even know his own address.
I don't know how to get back. As long as I keep building, our building with my side.
So you just kept looking back here, sort of as your touchstone.
Yes.
But you kept walking. I mean,
And as I recall, I knew which window was ours, and I saw my brother's.
so you came down to this corner, you turned this way,
I turned left. Yes.
turned left. Were you nervous?
Really nervous.
Still wearing the Halloween mask, he goes into a bank, a supermarket. He is terrified, and terrifying to those who see him. It doesn't take long for someone to call police. Mukunda is escorted away in an ambulance. For most, a nightmare. For Mukunda, it's his first real-life adventure.
I was in an ambulance for the first time. I was never in an ambulance. I was like, whoa, look at this. This is just like a movie set or something. I'm like, I got the siren on. This is pretty wild.
Because Mukunda won't speak, police think he's unbalanced. They take him to Bellevue Hospital, the psychiatric ward.
What was it like being in the hospital?
Fun, I have to say.
Fun?
It was because I interacted with, like, people for the first time.
He spends a week at the hospital and when he returns, there is a cataclysmic shift in the apartment. Oscar now knows he's no longer in control.
Basically, it was that first walk down this first sidewalk that broke the spell, really, over the entire family, right?
It is a walk on Broom Street.
After 14 years of claustrophobia and confinement, Murdaugh Angulo has broken free of his father's rules, liberating his brothers who now follow. The youngest is 11, the oldest 18. While their father stays in his bedroom behind closed doors, his sons take their first step outside their apartment without him.
What were those first forays out like?
Pure excitement.
Pure excitement.
Yeah.
They are tentative at first, traveling in a pack, not going far from home. Their senses are heightened. A simple stroll is supercharged. They revel in their new freedom.
And having independence feels really great if you've never had independence your whole life. It's so powerful. You feel like I can survive. I have much more confidence. I can make it.
Even as they're breaking free, their light remains the movies.
It looks 3D, man. Very fresh out here.
In their trips out, they wear a form of armor, the suits of the cast of Reservoir Dogs. With their long hair and sunglasses, they're hard to miss. And in their first week out, New Yorker Crystal Mozelle spots them and does a double take.
I was just walking down the street, and all of a sudden it was 6 of them, and I ran after them. There's like nothing I could have done.
The brothers who consider movies their religion ask Crystal what she does for a living. The first person they meet, and she is a movie maker. It feels like fate.
We shared the passion. It immediately made a connection from there.
They arrange to meet, and soon the brothers invite her for dinner at their apartment. Crystal has no idea she is the first outsider ever allowed into the apartment.
You're actually our first guest to be invited over.
Really?
Yeah.
Ever?
Yeah. Never invited anybody over before.
Why not?
Because we didn't have friends.
He had revealed to me that I was one of the first friends, and that was a huge, what? You didn't know that? Was your first friend?
Crystal gradually learns about the confines of the boy's childhood. She starts documenting as they experience life on the outside for the first time.
Want to try?
Their first bike ride. First visit to a restaurant.
How's that salad?
That's Murdaugh 5 years ago.
Is it gross?
No, it's very tasty and very chemical.
Chemical.
Yep, tastes like a chemical.
And perhaps most momentous, their first time to a movie theater to see Christian Bale starring in The Fighter.
That's awesome. I think I played that guy in The Dark Knight. Not many kids.
You had a front row seat to them experiencing the world for the first time.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it was wonderful. They would express, we've never been to the beach. You want to go to the beach? I said, okay, let's go. I'll follow you to the beach.
At the beach, where the first time they feel the sand in their toes, taste the salt in the air.
It's kind of like this baptism as they're crashing into the water for the first time. And it's very beautiful.
How did they grow and change as they began to go out and experience life?
They slowly learned how to interact with people.
Me, you. Where are you guys from?
The only way I knew how to make conversation with anybody was, you like movies? Yes, I do. What's your favorite? I like this movie. Oh, I like that too.
Learning the art of conversation and the art of movie making, Crystal teaches them about cinematography.
Tripod? The 3 legs.
Oh, yeah, that's Govinda, one of the twins, his hair long, dutifully taking notes.
And I perfume.
Selena is so open about them that you don't see every day when you're in New York City.
Crystal films for nearly 5 years. A friend tells her the boys look like a pack of wolves, and the nickname sticks. All the while, they become more accustomed to the outside world.
What were the differences between what you had thought life was like from watching the movies and what you really experienced life as being?
One, not everybody's trying to kill you. In movies, everybody understands what the other is saying, and they have a reply to it. But in real life, it's could you repeat the question? Could you repeat it? I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Mm-hmm. And not everything's a plan, in other words, in life.
Everybody's not following a script.
Exactly. So everything moves slower.
You need life to be edited a little bit better.
Their freedom brings transformation. The youngest, Jagadish and Krishna, changed their names to Eddie and Glenn, and 4 of the brothers cut off their long hair.
So cutting your hair off was a rite of advancing.
Right,
leaving the past behind.
It's okay, we're starting a new life. This is how we're moving forward.
Who did you see change the most over the course of the time you spent with them?
I think their mother.
Really?
Their mother really broke free out of the situation that they're in, and it was very beautiful to see that happen. I am not finding that place that has the donuts. That's what I'm looking for.
You've gone from living where you never were allowed to go out unless Oscar said you could, to now going out every single day.
Yes, I feel now like I've stepped back into how I really know myself.
Do you have regrets? Do you wish that you had claimed
that part of yourself sooner?
In some ways, I have regrets, but in many ways, it's been a journey for me. And I feel like it's been a learning process. And so I can't discount any part of it because it's my life. And that would be like saying, oh, I wish I hadn't lived for those years. And I never feel that.
Suzanne's biggest step, reaching out to the family she had cut off. In the documentary, she calls her mother. She hasn't heard her voice in more than 20 years.
Well, I just want to say that I love you so much, Mom. You know, I just love you so much.
That must have felt amazing to talk to her again.
Yeah, I just am so glad to have her in my family in my life again. I spent years running from what I really wanted.
The documentary The Wolfpack has won awards on the festival circuit, and the Angulo brothers have gone from seclusion to stardom. The brothers who once couldn't imagine speaking to strangers, no less girls, pose with movie stars.
They really are so articulate and so charming and entertaining.
You must be very proud of them.
Yes.
But one thing has not changed at all. After a night on the town rubbing elbows with celebrities, they return home to the same apartment that had been their prison. Their father, Oscar, still lives there. Suzanne remains married to him, but says he no longer makes the rules.
Are things different now with you and your husband?
Yes, our relationship was probably done like a 180.
In our visits to the apartment, Oscar remained behind this door, unseen.
This is my parents' room.
That's your
I think they're in there.
He did not respond to our request for comment. The relationship between Oscar and his sons is irreversibly damaged. Only one brother now speaks to him. The others, like Naranya, are desperately saving money to find a way to move out.
I have no interaction with him at all. As far as I'm concerned, he's dead. I'm trying to move out because living under the same roof just haunts me every second.
Naranya's twin brother Govinda feels differently.
I've grown to kind of forgive him because if I was always living in regret and just hating on the way things were done, I probably wouldn't be able to move on.
22-year-old Govinda is the one brother who has scraped together enough money to move out.
Hello.
He shares an apartment in Brooklyn with 3 roommates.
This is sort of the general movie area.
The wall is adorned by a poster of his favorite movie, Taxi Driver.
De Niro is one of my all-time favorite actors.
He says the film reminds him of how he used to feel before breaking out.
All my life needed was a sense of someplace to go.
It's a feeling Govinda has finally shed, 5 years after he was scribbling notes on filmmaking, learning how to press record.
Action.
Govinda is now working as a cinematographer on his first independent movie.
Now that we're on set and this movie's happening, it's sort of a surreal feeling. Almost I can't believe it.
After years inside, all the brothers have been making up for lost time, eagerly pursuing their passions. Naranya works as an environmental activist.
I spent a lot of time going to rallies, going to protests.
Eddie, the youngest, is an aspiring musician obsessed with 80s music. Bhagavan, the oldest, yoga instructor, and he's a teacher with the New York Hip Hop Dance Conservatory.
2.5 years ago, if you asked me to dance, I would not do it. I was very self-conscious. So hip hop dance, it allowed me to be more comfortable.
And Mukunda is working as a production assistant. He's also directing short films.
And action, let's see.
This one stars his family.
Look directly at the camera. Wave. Cut. That was good. Moving on.
And all the brothers are still obsessed with the movies, what got them through the darkest times. So we decided to make a dream of theirs come true. We organized a lunch, making sure to hide what was really on the menu. A surprise introduction to a man who was their lifeline in those dark days locked in their apartment.
Hey guys, I need all your attention for 1 second. I have somebody I want you to meet. Wolfpack, meet Robert De Niro.
Their reaction, Oscar-worthy displays of shock.
Robert.
Mr. Robert De Niro, it's an honor to be here with Robert.
They're tongue-tied and starstruck.
Naranya?
Just talked about it.
And after they sit to break the ice, Naranya asks the question Crystal taught them to use when they first started talking to strangers.
What are some of your favorite movies?
I like, Lawrence Arabia, On the Waterfront. What's the one with Montgomery Clifton, Elizabeth Taylor?
Oh, Place in the Sun.
Place in the Sun.
Wow.
You've seen more movies than I have, I'm sure.
Just days before meeting Robert De Niro, the boys had actually filmed a tribute to him, dressed in character, down to the bold cheek. reenacting their favorite scenes.
Get it out of here, right? I don't care where you got it. When you come back from where you got it.
Never rat on your friends. And always keep your mouth shut.
You don't hear the word no very often, do you?
I hear it all the time.
Boy, oh, please, so nice.
Why didn't you make your payment last week?
What are you talking about? I made my payment last week. What are you talking about? You guys know the film stuff better than I do, probably.
They're all smiles for their photo op, and for the Wolfpack, a simple cheese won't do.
Everybody say Johnny.
Johnny boy.
Where's that from?
Once their idol leaves, the brothers erupt in joy and disbelief.
Get in here.
Hey guys.
You are so welcome.
I'm gonna remember this.
Another impossible dream is about to take flight. The Wolfpack brothers are boarding an airplane. Our cameras rolling as they begin their journey from New York to Michigan for an event more than 20 years in the making.
We are all on our way to meet our family on my mom's side.
We're all here.
A family they'd only heard of, never met.
What's the seatbelt signs on?
Nervous, excited.
It's alright.
5 years earlier, this is what Murdaugh shared with filmmaker Crystal Mazel.
You know who any of your relatives are?
Never met him. Because we've always been here.
Here, in their cramped apartment, in which they were locked away for 14 years, the boys and their mother Suzanne, cut off from her family for decades.
I have not seen Suzanne for 23 years.
They tried to find out because where she was and no luck.
It's overwhelming. We got Suzanne.
Dead. The love has not stopped.
And now, 2020 has arranged for everyone to meet.
Here we go. Ready.
75 miles from Chicago, first glimpse into their mother's past.
So this is how you grew up. All
Yes.
this land.
Used to play in woods like this and build forts.
Their destination? A little town on the shores of Lake Michigan called Three Oaks. Its entire population is barely double that of the Wolfpack's housing complex. Suzanne's family has prepared a classic Midwestern picnic, tables loaded with food. They even made Wolfpack family t-shirts. And as the car pulls up,
Yay!
the enormity, the power of this moment is overwhelming.
Look at that, there's everybody. Look at that.
Wait, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
Oh dear. Oh my god. That's a lot of people.
The brothers, who quietly endured so much to make it this far, must gather the strength to take that final step.
Bro, hold my hand. I need your hand. Oh my god.
Let's go. Okay. Come on. Hi, everybody. True. Great.
Finally.
Yes.
I know a lot of people. You will wonder, are these guys going to be okay?
I think we're gonna be more than okay. I think we're gonna be great. Answer, absolutely.
You're survivors.
Hell yeah.
What made you guys so strong? I have to ask.
This one right over there. Mom. Mom's love.
Really? I don't think a mom could hear a nicer thing than that.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
How do I get it back down?
The day ends at this campground, Suzanne introducing her kids to a simple and sacred family ritual, roasting marshmallows by the fire.
The key to doing it is like you put it on the edge of the fire where it's hot, and you turn them so they like toast light brown.
At long last, the Wolfpack are back in the wild. Their future is wide open as the night sky.
I spent years running from what I really wanted.
Nobody's been impacted negatively by that experience of having to be inside all that time.
Well, no, we don't have time for that. We don't, hey, life's too short. Live it up. Just live it up. Live every moment.
The Wolfpack's new lives have expanded far beyond their small apartment. They are now a whirlwind of activity and adventure.
It's been a really fun ride. It's been a lot of great experiences.
They've seen the stars on Hollywood Boulevard and met them, posing for pictures with actors like Christian Slater and Mark Ruffalo. And the Wolfpack has been traveling the world, their press tour taking them from Abbey Road to the Coliseum, each new place a touchstone to a treasured movie.
London has reminded us of films such as The Lucky Man or Harry Potter.
And there have been plenty of firsts. Govinda has a new passion.
Experiencing crazy roller coasters. It's one of the most exciting things you can do.
Hello, everyone.
And Murdaugh, in addition to giving speeches, is learning another skill.
I'm like learning to drive a car.
And girls?
Yeah, there's been a couple of romances in our lives.
But the biggest voyage only took a few miles. Naranya, who desperately dreamed of leaving the family's Manhattan apartment, has finally moved out to Brooklyn. And he's cut his hair. A freeing gesture that it turns out is a nod at another movie.
Just wanted to serve a co-worker for like that for a long time. He just wanted to be go with it.
He's now the second brother out on his own.
So, that day that you're walking en masse, a group of you, down the street, and this one comes running after you, what did you think?
We ignored it a little bit at first. First thing she ever said was, "Are you all brothers?" And we all turned
They were
around,
like right there.
Yeah, right here. And she was like, "Where are you from? Who are you?" "Oh, you're into us."
When did you find out that she's a filmmaker?
Oh, our brother.
You said to me, what is it that you do for a living? And I said, I'm a filmmaker. And then you said, we're interested in getting into the business of filmmaking.
I think that's sort of
And at that point, you stopped trying to cross the street and turning your back on her after you answered her questions and really engaged.
And I really remember this specifically. Crystal saying, "We should keep in contact. What's your number?" You're like, I kind of don't remember my number. Let me give you my card. Let me write my number down here.
And so who called her?
I called her first, and then
How long did you wait?
Actually, it was a few days after we called. We called and we got back to her.
Gotcha.
Hey, cheese.
In English, please.
Excuse me.
In English, please.
I'd like to apologize to Leatherface's mom, Michael Myers' mom, and Ghostface's mom. It's not my fault. This is my project. I'm so scared. What's in the case? The guitar. You can go. It's here. I'm empty. Gracias. Come on, sorry, please. Now, wait a minute. Sit down, Zero. You can't arrest him simply because he's a bloody immigrant. He hasn't done anything wrong.
Okay, yeah, we're ready for you. Okay, Ron, you should probably find that, mate. We're just going to record this bit before we start talking.
Yeah, why?
It's what I do in true crime documentaries.
Okay.
I'll just do it.
Yeah, do it, yeah, sure. Look forward to seeing it. All this bit's going in the edit?
I think so.
Okay.
It's more real.
Is it? Okay. Let's go. January 1978. Sid Vicious leaves his girlfriend Nancy Spungen in England and jets off to Atlanta with his band. He's the bassist for the world's most controversial group, the Sex Pistols, the vanguard of a punk movement that, in the space of a year, has shocked the British establishment to its core. Now they have their sights set on America, but just 10 months later, the band have split up, Nancy has been stabbed in a New York hotel room, and Sid has been charged with murder. Was Sid really responsible? And if he wasn't, who was? With the help of forensic psychologist Dr. Julia Shaw, I, Ramesh Ranganathan, a comedian with admittedly no experience of criminal investigations whatsoever, will try and solve the mystery once and for all. The Misinvestigations of Ramesh Ranganathan.
What do you know about Sid and Nancy?
I know very little about Sid and Nancy. You know, I know that Sid, he was like kind of one of the biggest faces in punk. And my perception of Sid and Nancy is two people that were just really into drugs and were kind of quite self-destructive.
What do you know about punk?
I'm not massively into the music, but the ethos of punk, I am a fan of. And I think that whole kind of world is really interesting. Because Britain in the mid-70s was at such a trigger point, unemployment through the roof, national strikes, collapse in public services, he had all these young people looking at it going, this is our future.
Look at me now, I'm nothing.
Their frustration and anger just kind of exploded into this whole new cultural identity of anarchic rebellion that horrified the establishment.
Punk rock has become almost a battle cry in British society. For many people, it's a bigger threat to our way of life than Russian communism or hyperinflation.
Sid Vicious is kind of one of the poster boys for that whole movement. And he and Nancy lived the punk lifestyle, you know, to its absolute fullest. Nancy dying at just 20 was tragic, but it was completely overshadowed by Sid's notoriety and by the fact that she was a punk and an addict. I want to get to know Nancy. The key questions that we're kind of looking into here are: who was Nancy? What was she like? Who was Sid and what was he like? And whether Sid was capable of doing something like this to Nancy, who he supposedly loved. If you talk to people who are sort of in and around that scene, they feel like not only is it unlikely that he did it, but there was a whole cast of other characters who were in and out of the room that night who could have done it.
Where are you going to start?
Where are we going to start?
We're going to ask Julia what to do.
Oh, yeah. To begin the investigation, I was supposed to meet criminal psychologist Julia Shaw at 0900 hours on London's Denmark Street. But I turned up at 9:03. Because that's punk, innit? Hello, Dr. Julia Shaw.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Welcome to Denmark Street.
Thank you.
This was the hub of the music industry in the 70s. And, I mean, it's sort of stuck in time. Got the same vibe, some of the same shops. And this street is famous because David Bowie was living in a converted ambulance trying to meet people in the music industry here. And the Rolling Stones recorded their first album. So it's really sort of a hot spot for music at the time.
Very nice.
And this is 6, which was hired by Malcolm McLaren, who was the Sex Pistols manager. So they recorded here, and they were living here for a while.
Do you know that the pioneer of the diving helmet worked and lived here?
Are you just making shit up?
No, it just says it on that sign. Right?
Oh.
Okay, well, shall we go inside?
Yeah.
Have a look?
Yeah.
It's a perfect place to come if you're into punk and diving helmets. The manager of the Sex Pistols, Malcolm McLaren, was in a relationship with designer Vivienne Westwood, and they were arguably the architects of the British punk movement. Their fashion boutique on the King's Road was a hangout for disenfranchised teenagers, including Sid Vicious and Johnny Rotten. McLaren wanted to create the quintessential British punk band, so, inspired by Westwood's visual aesthetic, he formed the Sex Pistols. They shocked the nation, fighting at gigs and swearing on television. Concerts were cancelled, records were banned, and the Sex Pistols became infamous.
So this is where they rehearsed and lived. And all of these drawings are actually done by the band, Johnny Rotten.
Oh my god. Rotten bastard.
So that must have been Sid.
His head is a cock and balls, it looks like. I mean, I don't know. That's what it looks like.
It does. I mean, there's hair and everything.
Yeah.
The cheeks.
It's always the hair that sort of gives it away, isn't it?
Yeah. What age do you expect the person to be who made these drawings?
Well, they were sort of very young, weren't they? I understand trying to be funny and put up weird stuff, but why the swastika?
I guess the point of punk is to shock, and so it's very much in line with the visual language and the attitude. Just do the most offensive thing you can. And that was quite a big part of Sid Vicious's aesthetic, right?
Swastikas?
Yeah.
Well, they want a fucking angel in flares and an anorak. That ain't me, baby. We aren't nice boys. We were fucking nasty little bastards.
So there we have Nancy Sponger, which is pretty offensive.
She's been depicted as a sort of a wasted sponger.
Hypersexualized, the big boobs, is actually kind of similar to how the press was talking about her, how a lot of the people in their circle were talking about her as a sort of a former sex worker, as a junkie. She was also known as nauseating Nancy. All of these things that made her this almost, I don't know, this person you could toss away and sort of forget about because Nancy was seen in this way. A lot of people feel like this case was never really fully investigated.
February 1958. In a Philadelphia suburb, Nancy Spungen was born into a middle-class Jewish family. She struggled with her mental health from a young age. Her mother, Deborah, describes violent outbursts, and she was expelled from multiple schools. This yearbook photo belies the mental health issues teenage Nancy suffered. At 15, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and attempted to take her own life. At 17, after being kicked out of university for drug possession and theft, Nancy moved to New York and discovered the punk scene, which led her to England, the Sex Pistols, and Sid Vicious. 2 years later, at just 20, she was discovered dead in a hotel bathroom, with one stab wound to the abdomen. So what do we know?
So we know it's October 1978. The Sex Pistols have just broken up, and Sid and Nancy are living at a hotel in New York called the Chelsea Hotel. And And the evening that Nancy dies, Sid takes a bunch of drugs. They're called Tuinol, which are a drug that he was using a lot at the time. And so he's out of it for quite a lot of the night. Then in the morning, he calls the police saying something's happened to Nancy. And the police then establish that she was stabbed between 6 and 7 in the morning and then died shortly thereafter. And so the question is, what happened that night?
And what is Sid's account of all this?
So Sid confesses at points and then he denies it at points. He is then released on bail, and shortly thereafter he dies of a heroin overdose before the thing can go to court.
I guess the question is, was Sid really vicious? Who can we talk to about that?
Well, we can talk to someone who lived here with him at the time, who was the roadie for the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
His name is Rodent.
Okay. And that's his real name?
No.
Oh.
His name is Steve.
Okay. He looks a bit mousy.
I guess we'll find out.
Julia ran with my brilliant idea and arranged for us to meet Steve Connolly, aka Rodent, the Sex Pistols roadie from 1975 till the band split up in 78. I've discovered everyone in punk has to have an AKA, so I've decided mine is Rom Aggrieved. It's not great. Rodent? Mr. Rodent?
Just Rodent.
Just Rodent.
And why's that?
When I was pissed, I looked like a rat and I was a roadie.
Well, look, I know it's hard to imagine, but I'm a punk novice. So, can you break down what punk is for me?
No.
Cool. That's punk.
Punk was very much a negative expression. It was a rejection of the 1 million unemployed and traditional politics. We'd had the 3-day week. We'd lived through the 3-day week. England was very grey. It did feel sort of like there wasn't really much to do. So, if society rejects you, you reject society.
So is it kind of an explosion of feeling, and the whole ethos is like, we're just pissed off with everything, and then on top of that, we're not going to wait to learn and become super musical, we're just going to get up and just give it a go?
No, absolutely. It wasn't about the music, it was about attitude. And attitude was the whole thing of it, and I'm fueled by copious amounts of speed as well.
So what was Sid actually like?
Sid was charming, he was funny, he was gentle, and he was everything that everybody thinks Sid wasn't.
Rodent told us Sid's real name was John Ritchie. He grew up with single mum Anne, who struggled with heroin addiction throughout his childhood. In this photo from his school days in Tunbridge Wells, Sid looks like the quiet and mild-mannered boy his classmates described. As a teenager, he met John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, at a school for students with behavioural difficulties. Sid wasn't in the original Sex Pistols lineup, but he was at every gig, apparently inventing the pogo dance and causing the fights that made the band infamous. McLaren famously said, if Johnny Rotten is the voice of punk, then vicious is the attitude. And in 1977, just 19 years old, he joined the band. So the Sid that you read about, and is sort of this kind of guy that's getting into fights, because he kind of seemed like quite an unpleasant kind of rowdy guy.
He was called Vicious because he was anything but.
Right.
It was one of those nicknames as the opposite. But it did mean that when press started coming out there, people were going, so you're vicious, are you? Go on, show us, come on then, if you think hard enough. So, he started to retaliate.
And the name Vicious, do you think that became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or...?
Well, it became self-fulfilling, yes. I think, he was forced into that position to some extent. And also because all young people felt undervalued and worthless, If you feel undervalued and worthless, you don't care if you're going to get shit kicked out of you in a fight, because, that's what you deserve.
The young kids of today, they're frustrated and bored. They're sick of being pushed around.
As punk became a way for disillusioned teenagers to express themselves, Sid Vicious became their poster boy. 2 weeks after he joined the Sex Pistols, they were signed by A&M Records. In celebration, the band trashed their offices. A week later, Sid glassed someone in a nightclub, and their contract was terminated. The same week, 18-year-old Nancy followed her favourite New York punk band to London. She met the Sex Pistols, and Nancy and Sid quickly became inseparable. 3 months later, the band's iconic and only album reached #1 in the charts. The Sex Pistols were at the high point of their career. But the band were increasingly unhappy with Nancy's presence.
Whatever my feelings about Nancy are, we have to say that Sid and Nancy were besotted with each other. You know, they were completely committed to each other, so there's something nice there. However, I also think that Nancy was a vampire. It felt that she was part of Sid's demise into heroin addiction. This nice, innocent, sweet, charming, witty young man became a sort of really rather boring man, and stroppy and selfish and everything that he wasn't before he became. And we did try to kidnap her one time.
What?
Well, it was a pretty pathetic attempt at kidnapping. Sid was sent to the dentist because he had bad teeth. We bought one-way ticket for Nancy, and we're there saying, look, Nancy, it's the best for everybody. You just get on the plane, here's your ticket. There was more and more of us all trying to hustle her into a cab to take her to the airport. She'd go running off into the Holiday Inn Marble Arch going, you can't do this is kidnapping, you can't do this. And we'd drag her back and say, look, it's for the best. Sid, it's not good for Sid, but, it was a pretty pathetic and failed attempt. And of course, Malcolm didn't approve because it was tearing up all of his nicely laid plans.
Around that time, Nancy gave a candid interview about Malcolm.
He didn't like me because I was a junkie. He tried to keep me and Sid apart for months and months and months. Sid just kept saying, look, I don't have to stay in my place who I want to stay in my place, and you're not going to tell me who not to, but just fuck off. And he just...
So Nancy knew she was disliked, which can't have been easy for her.
One of the things that we noticed is that how negatively Nancy was sort of talked about in the press, this sort of getting Nancy and all of this, and the depiction of her.
Sid defined punk. So many people, many young people identified with Sid in a very big way. And so it's easy then to blame Nancy for ruining their idol.
Roden, his take on it is Nancy has led Sid astray, and it was their kind of misadventure that led to her death and then eventually his.
Obviously, we're talking about somebody that was, had issues with mental health and issues with addiction. And if that was somebody we're dealing with now, you'd look at that person with sympathy and try and see how you can help that person. But unfortunately, because of the time we're talking about and because of the nature of a band and the dynamic of that, they just saw her as a villain of the whole piece. It's just quite sad. We needed to meet some people who could give us a deeper insight into Nancy. She must have had some friends in the US.
Okay, I think we need to go to New York.
Yeah?
We should probably fly there, actually. I'll probably need the laptop to book the flights. Would you go New York plane?
Nailing it.
Look out that way. Carry on. Look at your shoulder, run with the broken bridge and that.
Manhattan's so expensive that we could only afford to be here for 48 hours to solve this case.
How long are we going to be doing this for?
So we had to be super efficient.
Like what?
Nancy moved to New York at 17 years old, 2 years before meeting Sid. In the 70s, Manhattan was a rough place to live. In parallel to the UK, young people were experiencing a social upheaval. The economy had collapsed and crime was through the roof. Drugs were easy to come by. Cheap rent attracted artists creating raw, edgy punk music in packed-out underground clubs. Nancy tried to carve out a career as a punk journalist, supporting herself with table dancing and occasional sex work. But we wanted to know more about teenage Nancy, so Julia tracked down her friend Deborah Evans, aka Debbie Revenge.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hello.
Come in.
So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Deborah.
I'm Ramesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome. This is me.
Oh, wow.
Very androgynous. I like it.
Punk rock saved my life. It saved a lot of our lives because we had nowhere else to go. And a lot of us didn't have families. It became our chosen family.
When did you first meet Nancy?
Nancy, I met probably in some club go-go dancing. She was a really good go-go girl. I don't know if she was bipolar, but it seemed like it. When you can catch Nancy in a good mood, she was so sweet. She was very cunning and very smart. You have to be cunning to live a drug life because you're lying all the time. We all supported one another. I mean, it was really like our own dysfunctional family.
So the groupie family.
What was the band and groupie family?
So am I right in saying that whereas now the term groupie is seen as something negative, back then it was something you aspired to be?
Oh, definitely. They actually had a magazine that came out back then. They would show like groupies with Led Zeppelin, and it would tell where they hang out on Sunset Strip and everything.
Wow, so this magazine actually encouraged teenage girls to become groupies. Mm-hmm. She looks about 13, doesn't she? It's shocking. I mean, today, that would be completely outrageous. But you get it, don't you? Because punk music was so exciting. And then if you become a groupie, So you're basically becoming part of the scene, right?
Right. And when you're with the band, you're like part of the band almost. Nancy, her whole adult life, she's wanted to have a rock and roll boyfriend, which I can understand. And she found one in Sid that she could actually manage. She was a gatekeeper without compare. Nancy was involved in every single inch of his life. She was so proud.
Did you have any concerns about Sid and Nancy's relationship, like watching it from where you were?
No, because it was just every other drug addict relationship. In that sense, they'd have terrible drag-out fights, and then they'd make up and be fine for 5 or 6 days.
So it wasn't concerning because it's kind of what everyone...
Everybody was like that. Yeah, we didn't even think about it. And back then, domestic violence, you didn't even think of it as domestic. We didn't even know what that was. We just liked to get in fights and stuff.
Do you think they loved each other?
Yes. I think they were perfect for each other in a sub-twisted, sick way. And that's why I don't think that Sid killed her.
And so what's your take on what happened that night?
Nobody knows who did it. There's a few... are sure that Sid did it. I don't think Sid did it. He's not that... He's weak. He was too weak to do that. I know that she had gotten her drugs and gave the money to Rocket's regular. And I know that he was over there that night. That's all I know.
Real name Michael Morra, Rockets was an actor, stand-up comedian and part-time drug dealer who was acting as bodyguard for Sid. He told police and the press that Nancy called him and asked him to bring drugs to the Chelsea hotel that night. Deborah told us many people wondered if Rockets was involved in Nancy's death, but we can't talk to him because he died in 2001.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too.
So nice to
meet you as well. You were so pretty. You're lucky it's not 30 years ago.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was talking about her.
No, I know.
I feel like we're getting to know Nancy and the counterculture world she inhabited. Julia says I'm normcore, which I think is a nice way of saying boring. So she thought it might help for me to get into the punk mindset. That's psychology, apparently.
So punk is just wearing whatever the hell you want, right?
A lot of it's nonconformity, so it's about specifically breaking what's normal. Challenging hierarchies, challenging gender, like that. Just challenging gender conformity norms.
What do you think of this?
I think it's kind of amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you reckon I can pull it off?
No, but it is amazing. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah? That was pretty cool.
I quite like this jumper. And I quite like the mask for private stuff.
You look pretty punk.
Thank you. What stance are you supposed to have for it?
Nailing it.
So why do you think it is that women want to sleep with guys like me with this bad boy image?
Like, there's a huge psychological element, right, to punk and being like, we're going to break the system. And so when groupies show up, what they're trying to do is they're trying to attach themselves to people who are breaking down systems that don't work for them. So people like Nancy, who was having severe mental health issues, and she's drawn to this space where people are just intentionally trying to break the system. And the system isn't just music, it's society, it's hierarchy, it's fashion.
So it's just you sort of fall out of society, if you like, and then there's this sort of group of people where everyone's accepted, and then everyone's just going sort of fuck everything, and that's very alluring.
I don't think it's that they fall out of society. I think it's that society has failed them. The system doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for my friends, and we're trying to break it and make something new. And even if that something new is just sort of an island of anarchy, this is ours.
I feel like I had a pretty good understanding of Nancy and her relationship with Sid. Although it was volatile, at this point, I couldn't see a motive for murder. So next, we needed to look at what happened after the Sex Pistols got to America. As the Sex Pistols embarked on their US tour, there was rising tension within the band. Sid was angry with the rest of the group for refusing to let Nancy join the tour. He was also forced into heroin withdrawal. He got into fights with members of the audience. At one gig, he hit someone with his bass. Within 2 weeks, the band had split. In August, Sid and Nancy moved to Manhattan, living in the Chelsea Hotel, where, 3 months later, Nancy would die.
This is the legendary spot in New York. At various times it was home to people like Leonard Cohen, Dee Dee Ramone, Edith Piaf, Madonna, Stanley Kubrick, Bob Dylan, and Andy Warhol. Musicians, artists, people who were trying to make it and people already had. People could do things like swap art for rent if they couldn't make the rent.
And then so, it's a hotel where people just lived here?
Yeah.
One of my friends had a similar situation, sort of separated from his wife, and he lived in a travel lodge at Three Bridges for 2 weeks. So, Sex Pistols are split up.
Yeah.
Nancy takes over Sid Vicious's career.
She's trying to help him start a solo career, really, but they're both heavy users, and so they're taking lots of drugs in this hotel. There's lots of other drug users in the space as well, and they were living in room 100 just down there.
So, are we allowed to go and have a look around the room?
They've told us that we can't film inside. I think they're trying to shake their reputation for being the spot where one thing happened, because lots of interesting artists live here.
Right.
So I think we should just leave it.
Well, I just think we're here. We're not come to look at the outside of the building.
It's been redecorated anyway.
Yeah, but you still get a feel for it.
Yeah, but
I'm going to go and ask them if we can film.
I don't think they're going to let you.
Well, I'm just going to say it's like journalistic, it's an investigation. This area of public interest we should be allowed in.
I think we should give them their peas.
Am I jaywalking now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Maybe you shouldn't be.
Just got to wait for it to be safe.
There's no way.
Morning.
That was quick.
The guy opened the door and said morning, and I shut myself.
Any clues?
I've got some clues about my own character, yeah. Turns out I've got absolutely no bottle whatsoever, but yeah, they've got like a foyer with some like chairs and a couple of tables on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And then they've got like a reception desk where you check in.
So a hotel. Yeah.
No, I mean, what have we learned from standing out here? It's good to see it from the outside, though.
I think
that's
so.
all we've come here for.
I think it's
Can't even see the actual room because that's one back, but still good.
We needed to talk to people who interacted with Sid and Nancy in the Chelsea hotel on the night she died. One person who was definitely in their room, Rocket's Red Glare, was now deceased, but we'd heard there were more, so we did some in-depth research. Well, Julia did, and found musician Neon Leon.
I find it kind of hard to believe he loved her more than he loved his music.
Hello, Neon Leon.
Hi, Ramesh.
This is Dr. Julia Shaw.
Hi, Doctor. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
At 28 years old, Neon lived on the first floor, down the corridor from Sid and Nancy.
So we were looking into this whole case of Sid and Nancy and what happened that night. And Nancy, it felt like when you look at all of the press around that time, the portrayal of her was quite negative, and she was kind of felt like a lot of the press was sort of demonising her. And you were good friends with her, right?
Yes, I knew her from Philadelphia. I didn't see her as some evil vixen. She was a very giving and intelligent person. She was no dummy. She would look after her friends and things like this. She was not some asshole person. She would say, "Oh, Neon, you want to go see Aerosmith? I got some passes from Steve Tyler." Okay. And, wow.
So if we zoom in on the night that Nancy died, so what happened, as far as you remember, the evening of Nancy's death?
Okay, on that night, Sid and Nancy came to my flat. Nancy, she brought a knife with her and said, "Look, what I bought Sid." She says, "You want to touch it?" I said, "No, I'm not into knives."
So they knocked on the door, and so around what time?
After 9. Maybe they were there for an hour.
So they left around 10, 11 o'clock, right?
Yeah, somewhere around. And then later on, the phone rang, and it was Nancy. And she says, "Hey, Leon, do you have a joint for me?" "No." "How's Sid?" "Oh, he's useless. He's taken so much pills. He's totally out of it. He's unconscious." And there was someone talking in the background. I don't know who, but I could hear another voice. It was not Sid.
So Sid's passed out, but there's someone else in the room who's not Sid.
That's correct. The next day, there's a knock on my door, and I open the door, and it's like reporters, TV crews, and then here comes these two detectives, and there's Nancy being taken out in a body bag and put into the morgue.
Neon discovered Nancy had been stabbed in the bedroom sometime between 6 and 7 a.m. Blood had soaked into the bed. When the police entered room 100 at 11 a.m, they found her in the bathroom. She'd been dead for at least an hour.
That must have been awful.
Yeah, it was, and it got more and more awful as time went by.
So did the police consider you a suspect?
Yes, but it didn't last long. That lasted just a few days.
Thank you so much, Neon. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
I was surprised to hear Nancy bought Sid a knife that day. Neon told us that like spikes and chains, knives became a of the punk aesthetic. Photographer Pierre Bernat captured these candid pictures of Sid and Nancy. He said that what now looks pretty sinister at the time seemed like a game, and there was nothing violent about it. But Sid was also photographed with self-inflicted cuts. I find these images pretty shocking, and this was just days before the Sex Pistols split up. So we wanted to understand Sid's state of mind in the weeks leading up to Nancy's death. He was hanging out in New York's punk bars, occasionally playing gigs. Nancy had taken over his career.
You're Sid's manager, correct?
Yeah.
What kind of role do you play in this?
I mean, I arrange recording, I arrange gigs, I arrange the publicity, I talk to the club owners, to the people at the record company, to the people in newspapers, magazines, things like that.
Julia found someone we could talk to who was at the epicenter of that scene.
Hello, I'm John.
So nice to meet you.
John Holstrom founded Punk Magazine and designed covers for the Ramones.
Oh, welcome to the Bowery. This was the Isle of Lost Souls, where all the bums hung out. This neighborhood was dangerous. There were street prostitutes and drug dealers, and then this little bar here opened up called CBGB's. Yeah, you see the black awning? There used to be a white awning like the one next to it. Patti Smith played there, and all these other bands started playing here. And before you know it, it just became a big scene. I felt like I was at the Cavern Club watching the Beatles before they were famous. This is the original location for Max's Kansas City. It even says Max on the sign. Now, Sid Vicious played here, famously, some of his last shows. But I didn't bother to go, because people would go there hoping he would overdose on heroin in front of them. Or, he'd be all so junked out he couldn't perform. Like, some people like that. That's entertaining to them, not to me.
It's like a form of disaster tourism.
Yes. It's a great analogy.
I actually made that up. I made that up.
You did?
No, we didn't.
I coined it 95.
John followed the Sex Pistols on their infamous 1978 tour.
The first time I saw them, they were very subdued. It was just like a regular rock and roll band. So I was not impressed. But then the next show was Randy's Rodeo, where the audience wanted to kill them. They were provoking the audience, and the audience was hitting back. It was like a heavyweight fight. It was it was the most amazing show I'd ever seen.
So what was Sid Vicious like on stage?
Very inconsistent. Sometimes he'd just sit there and pluck away at the bass. And then at a place like Dallas, he had groupies in the front, and they ended up headbutting him. So he's bleeding on his nose, and he's covered in blood, and he's scarred up, and people loved it.
And what was Sid actually like? Because some people say he's a very timid guy, kind of being told what to do by Nancy, but then there's also these incidents of extreme violence.
Well, whenever I met him, he was very pleasant, almost childlike. I met him several times, but he'd never remember you the next day. He was so out of it. And he was dope sick, and hard drugs really changed a person's personality, I think. You'd see this common thread of people who kind of lost souls,
After the Sex Pistols split, the documentary crew struggled to film an interview with the barely conscious Sid, while Nancy tried to assist them.
What was it that you thought the pistol were trying to do? Was it just like re-kick the establishment up the arse? Sid?
Sid, he's not interviewing me. Please try and wake up. Do you want me to make you a cup of coffee?
Yeah, could you?
Yes, I'll make you a cup of coffee. But will you try and fucking wake up, please?
This is how Neon Leon said Nancy described Sid on the night of her death. Completely out of it.
That's what a lot of addicts have to do. They have to fill up that unhappiness and numb themselves emotionally.
So do you feel like these incidents of violence and his crazy behavior, do you put that almost entirely down to drugs?
I don't really know, but, he famously attacked Nick Kent, the music journalist. I think he hit him with some chains.
What was that fight all about?
Somebody started a friend of mine, so I whacked him in the face with a belt.
Did you win?
Of course we won.
All right. How about that girl that punched you in the nose in Texas? Did you really spit the blood back in her face?
Of course.
He had a violent streak. Very unpredictable.
And was he ever a danger to himself?
Yeah, I think Sid was mostly a danger to himself.
Sid would have died of 15 deaths if I hadn't been around. Because that's just, the way he is. When he's not, this is what he does when he's not with me.
Do you think he did it?
I'm leaning towards thinking Sid killed Nancy.
One of the arguments that's put forward for Sid not having done it is that he was completely out of it and there's no way that he could have possibly done it.
Right, and I believed that for many years. But then testimony by hotel employees who swore that Sid was walking around the hotel hallway at 5 in the morning.
So he's walking around. So he's not comatose.
The only part of this that makes you think maybe someone else did it was that Nancy had a lot of money on the dresser and it was all gone when the police arrived. It's one of those mysteries. We don't have enough mystery in our life.
I know, but the point of this show is we're trying to solve it. That's a slight issue we've got. So
how are you feeling about the case so far?
the thing is, we're trying to get a clearer picture of what happened. But as we try and clear the picture, it feels like the picture is sort of getting more and more unclear. And in many ways, I feel like the picture is less clear than we started looking at the picture.
What are you going to do to clear it up?
I think we need to go and sort of talk to some people who are there. Hopefully they can help make the picture a little bit clearer. And we can sort of come out of that with a much clearer picture of what happened. But about that money John mentioned, several witnesses told the police or the press that Sid and Nancy had a bag of cash in the room that night, at least $1,000, which was gone the next morning. So could Nancy's death have been a robbery gone wrong? We needed to start separating the facts from the rumours, myths and opinions. And I had a plan. So what I thought was we could just use this space to figure out what happened.
Okay.
So we can get our heads around the timeline. So I thought this could be a visual representation. That's the dividing wall between the bathroom and the room, right?
Okay.
That's the far wall of the bathroom.
Okay, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, fine.
It's not going to be to scale. It's just going to be using my eye. But to give you some confidence, I'm using my good one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop.
Now, I've got these to represent people.
Nice.
We're going to use that to represent the key participants in the case. Sid.
Yep.
Nancy. Yeah. Then I'm going to do Rockets. Neon. Leon.
And these are the police.
Yeah. Hey, we're stopping and searching for no legitimate reason. Okay. There we go. What do you think, Julia, of this setup?
Perfect.
Huh?
Perfect.
Okay. We've forgotten one really important character in this whole thing. Bag of money.
Nice.
Thank you. Okay.
Should we do a drugs one?
I've actually bought real stuff for that. No, I'm joking. Yeah, we can do. Okay, so we've got our room. We've got our characters. What's the first thing we know from that night?
First thing, Nancy and Sid leave Neon Leon's room and return to their hotel room. And then they crash into the bed, is how I'm picturing it, but we don't know that that's what happened.
Okay, well, let's just put them in the room for now.
Okay.
We don't want to hypothesise, do we, Julia? That's not how investigations work.
So at 2:30, Rocket's Red Glare says that he gets a call from Nancy begging for some drugs.
So 3:15, I've got him in the room, Nancy, Rockets and Sid at 3:15.
Right. So Rocket says that he sees Nancy go to her bag, and there's sort of 50s and 100s just spilling out of her bag.
So what we know is that there's a bag with a substantial amount of cash in it, right?
Yeah.
So apparently at 4 a.m, Neon Leon got a phone call from Nancy saying that they were completely high on Tuminols and Sid was just completely out. One of the arguments against Sid having stabbed Nancy is that with the amount of Tuinol he'd taken, he would have been passed out. But John told us Sid was reportedly roaming the halls of the Chelsea Hotel. So before we could finish our skittle reconstruction, we needed more info.
There is someone who has some information, apparently, who I've been trying to get a hold of, who has something that will help us.
And did you know about this before I taped out the hotel room and bought a set of wooden skittles?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Julia took me to see Anne Bardak, a renowned news journalist. Very nice.
Yeah, this is my office. This is Johnny Rotten, or John Lydon he became.
Sorry, whose legs are this?
They're mine. I can tell you nothing went beyond that.
Okay.
Nothing.
No, I wasn't insinuating. In the 70s, Anne was a regular on the New York punk scene. Her career began with an interview series called Punks and Bad Boys, and new people living in the Chelsea hotel.
There were some old-timers in the Chelsea that were the cultural milieu of the living theater. An avant-garde theater group started in the 50s and 60s. The Chelsea Hotel was very much headquarters for a lot of older bohemian types, but the younger people were the punks.
On the day Nancy died, Anne went to the Chelsea to interview witnesses and created a timeline of events.
How many people do you think you spoke with at the hotel?
I think I went door to door, room to room. I had my little tape recorder and I just said, tell me what you saw and heard. Tell me what you saw and heard.
What time was Rockets in the room, according to your timeline?
Rocket says that he arrived at the Chelsea at 3:15 a.m. He's saying that he was in the room for roughly 2 hours.
Okay, so if Rockets is in the room between 3 and 5, that could be the voice that Leon heard at 4 a.m.
Yeah, could be.
I'm so good at this. One of the things it said is that Sid was so completely out of it that it couldn't possibly have been him. Like, he was barely conscious, so it couldn't have been him that did it.
I don't think so. This is what Kenny the bellhop said on record. He went up because Sid Vicious is banging on everybody's door. Kenny goes upstairs and he finds this very unruly, noisy Sid Vicious. He went to hit me.
So Sid tries to hit
the bellboy. He went at me again, so I hit him and I kept pounding him till he went down to the floor. He had a bloodied mouth. There was blood all over his face and t-shirt, recalls Kenny. I don't know if he went to his room. When I got back to the front desk, it was 5:15.
So, if the bellboy sees Sid Vicious trying to hit him, he's obviously not too out of it to do anything.
Exactly. Let me tell you my own personal view. This was a really, really troubled soul. She could be aggressive and obnoxious. They were on massive amounts of narcotics. She bought him a knife, and they played with knives. And I think this is a narcotic death with a stab wound. This is completely, it made perfect sense to me.
So you're saying the most parsimonious answer is probably the right one here?
Absolutely.
What does parsimonious mean?
Oh, the simplest answer. That simple answer.
Okay. Well, use the simplest word. Okay, so what have we learned?
Well, Anne said that Rockets was in the room between about 3:15 and 5 a.m. And Sid was just passed out.
Yes, but Sid is up and fighting a bellboy between 5 and 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So all of this talk about Sid was too out of it to have done anything, I mean, that completely contradicts that, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And I've got a hold of transcripts from the grand jury trial.
There's a trial?
Well, a grand jury trial.
Which is what?
When you decide whether there's enough evidence to prosecute.
Yeah, no, I just wanted it confirmed.
This transcript has Sid's confession to the police.
So Sid actually just confessed it?
Well, he made a confession. It says here he told the first police officers he didn't know what happened. Then it says he spoke to detectives and denied stabbing her, but then later he confesses. A police officer said that Sid made an informal confession to him, saying, in quotes, "I stabbed her, but I didn't mean to kill her. I loved her, but she treated me like shit."
And was that recorded anywhere?
Well, it wasn't recorded, and there was no lawyer present, so there was no official statement. This was apparently said to the police officer, and then the police officer wrote it down. But Sid never came in and did a formal confession, didn't sign a confession, which are the normal steps that you would then take from that point.
Okay, but so is that reliable evidence?
It's evidence. It's not very good evidence, but it's evidence.
Well, I just don't know what the hell's going on. I mean, every time we get a new detail, I get more confused, to be honest.
Yeah, fair. It also says that Sid told police detectives that when he woke up, Nancy was in the bathroom. She'd been stabbed, but she was still breathing. Then he says he left and went out to get methadone.
For whatever reason, maybe it was shock or maybe it was guilt that he didn't go and get help when he could and probably should have. Arguably, he could have saved her. That is a difficult thing to contemplate. The fact that the death was so tragic does make you want to just really find out exactly what happened. And it could be that it's the simple explanation that they were both high on drugs and Sid did it, but I still have niggling questions. There's things that are unanswered, like, for example, the missing bag of money. What was that all about? Just when we thought we'd run out of leads, we were contacted by a mystery informant. It made me feel like I was in a proper New York cop drama, so we arranged to meet him on a dodgy-looking street corner on the wrong side of the tracks. Well, it was on a side of the tracks.
Hey, just called.
How are you? Oh, hello, mate. Ramesh.
Hey.
Hi. You guys want to walk?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So, Jesse, what is your connection to all of this?
Well, I've been working on a book about this case for about the past 5 years now.
Right. And what drew you to it?
I was a fan first. As I grew older and I became a true crime journalist, I always found the unanswered questions in the Sid and Nancy case really compelling. And then the more I dug, I really realized everything people think they know about this case isn't true. So it's been pretty eye-opening.
So here's my question.
Sure.
Do you think you have solved this case?
I'm not arrogant enough to say that, but I think I've come closer than other people.
Okay. I take that to mean yes.
Sure.
The thing that people consistently say is that the police didn't bother to investigate it at all. They had their murderer in Sid. He was a junkie and his girlfriend died, and so they didn't bother to investigate it properly. Is that the case?
I thought that was the case. I was shocked to find out no. They actually did a pretty diligent job working behind the scenes into not just one suspect, there were at the very least 3. So when I got hold of the original case file from the NYPD, I was pretty shocked.
Hold on, you've got the actual case file?
Oh yeah, I got it right here.
And then you've printed it out and put it in nice little folders for us. Thank you, Jesse.
Well, it's the BBC.
Yeah, no, good.
You have to bring your A game.
Yeah. Well, not so much nowadays, but...
This is the state of room 100 that morning. As you can see, the room is a total mess. There's blood stains on the mattress. The sheets are all torn up. It was a total pig pen of a crime scene. And here we've got the crime scene diagram of where Nancy's single knife wound was. It's about an inch below her navel, which not very common in stabbing murders. You know, usually a crime of passion, they're riddled with wounds. This is just one small, clean wound below her belly button.
So you said they looked into 3 suspects?
Yeah, well, there's 3 suspects in addition to Sid.
Oh.
Very briefly, they considered Neon Leon a suspect, but they cleared Leon as a suspect almost immediately. Rocket's red glare. They interviewed him on October 20th, and he told them there was a significant amount of money in that room. And that is a common thread in the case file. The cops, when they first arrested Sid, they thought they had their man, and then as time went on and on, they found out, oh, no, there were other people in that room and there's a ton of money missing. Knife, hypodermic needles, clothing, blood samples, other personal property found at the scene, no mention of money. Okay. So there was a robbery. Were they robbed by the person who killed Nancy? Who knows, but the money was gone the next morning.
Okay, so does this statement from Rockets, does this clear things up? Does it exonerate him?
I think it does. To put myself in his shoes, if I had killed her and made off with the money in the room and I knew that the cops had arrested someone else for it, I wouldn't be volunteering to sit down with the FBI and say, no, let me tell you, Sid didn't do it. But they interviewed this guy for nearly 9 hours, and that's where another shady character comes into the story, a Tuinol and Quaalude dealer known as Steve C. White guy, early 20s, longish hair. At least 3 people saw a man matching that description, going into room 100, leaving room 100, and sitting in room 100 that night. But Steve C., once he was interviewed by the police, he denied ever setting foot in the Chelsea that night and said, oh no, yeah, I saw them that night, but no, they came to my place, which we have no evidence of whatsoever.
That's a bad look for him, right?
Not a good one, no. They took this guy seriously as a suspect.
Do you think that someone killed Nancy for the money?
That is the clearest motive that I can think of. The money was there, then it wasn't. This person tries taking the money, she sees it, tries to stop him. A fight ensued, quick stab to the gut, flees the room.
And do you think that was Steve C?
I mean, when the NYPD interviewed Steve C, note at the bottom here, it says case active. Every other suspect or person of interest they talked to in this case, their interview notes are all say case closed, meaning, all right, we've ruled this person out through an interview.
The way you're presenting it sounds obvious. Mm-hmm. And the police had him on their radar. Why didn't they press charges?
I think without any hardcore physical evidence linking him to it, like fingerprints, clothing fibers, a confession, they hit kind of a brick wall. After he was interrogated by the police, no one I interviewed said they saw him again after that, so the trail kind of goes cold. He could still be out there. And then not too long after that, Sid's dead. So suddenly the case is just poof, gone. For some reason, after Sid dies, the
NYPD just decides, case closed, nothing we can do here. Sorry, bud.
No, it's okay. After his arrest, Sid's record company, Virgin Records, put up $50,000 for his bail. 3 weeks later, Sid got into a fight with Patti Smith's brother and was thrown back in jail. In January 1979, detoxed from heroin, he was released on bail for a second time. He was interviewed by a BBC journalist.
And what do you think made it happen? It was meant to happen. Nancy always said she'd die before she was 21. Where would you like to be? Under the ground. Are you serious? Or are you?
5 weeks after this interview, Sid died of a heroin overdose. There was ongoing speculation over whether he overdosed deliberately or because his tolerance was low after detox. With Ann Bardak's timeline and Jesse's access to the police file, we had all the evidence we needed to complete our reconstruction.
So Sid is crashed out on the bed, passed out. So apparently at 4 a.m, Neon Leon got a phone call from Nancy.
He's taken so much pills, he's totally out of it. He's unconscious.
Yeah, and he said he could hear another male voice in the room, but it wasn't a British voice, so it couldn't have been Sid, right?
Could have been Rockets.
Could have been Rockets, because Rockets didn't leave till 5. So Rocket said that he stopped at the front desk to make a phone call, and he saw Stephen C., who was Sid and Nancy's dealer.
Mr. S.
Mr. S., turning the corner and entering the elevator.
At least 3 people saw a man matching that description, going into room 100, leaving room 100, and sitting in room 100 that night.
Yeah, so Steve C. was interviewed as a suspect. Witnesses placed him at the hotel that night, but he denied being there. And there was insufficient evidence that he was involved, so the police never pressed charges.
Yeah.
Kenny the bellhop
sees Sid in the hallway just being Larry, and they have a massive fight. What a fuck?
Now, police believe, apparently, that Nancy would have been stabbed between 6 and 7 and died somewhere between 8 and 10.
So we think she was stabbed in the bed because there's blood on the bedding. And then somehow she makes it over to the bathroom and she ends up dying here on the floor. And so whether she walks herself or somebody brings her here is unclear.
So Sid claims that he woke up
to find Nancy bleeding,
but breathing, and then for some reason went off to get himself some methadone.
So either he judged the situation as not that bad, and or he thought, I need to get sober to deal with the situation.
Possibly, yeah.
Or he did it and he wanted to get out.
Yeah. At 10 a.m, the desk receives a phone call from Sid saying there's somebody who's sick and we need some help.
The police and an ambulance arrive and they knock on the door, come in, and they find Nancy in the bathroom. And at this point, she's already died.
And the cash is gone. Well, we've done all of this now, and I've got to be honest, I'm still completely confused. I think the biggest problem for me is that we still don't really know what Sid was actually like. You listen to some people and they say that he was unpredictable, vicious by name and nature. And then there's other people that say he was like a kitten and he could never have done it. I think that no matter how long you look at it, that is the mystery that we're never really going to solve. With all avenues of investigation exhausted, the BBC refused to fund another night in a New York hotel, or pay for the nuts I ate from the minibar. I came into this thinking it's the simplest explanation. He was there, it must have been him. But I'm more doubtful that it was Sid than I was before we started the investigation. This bag of money that went missing, and the fact that Steve C. denied being there at all when a couple of people had placed him there, and the fact he sort of disappeared, I think those sort of things have made me think he's a person of interest. So look, I'm not saying that I don't think it was Sid, but I'm saying that I'm less convinced it was than when we started this whole thing.
I think that Sid probably stabbed her. Probably because he was really high and it was sort of an accident. Not to excuse it, but I think contextually it's unlikely from all that we've heard that he wanted to kill her, I think.
I think the fact that the case was just left kind of unanswered, you can't help feeling that sort of Nancy's been a little bit let down in all of this.
Yeah, they've definitely failed her. When we look at her actual life, she had such a hard life, and she was struggling with mental health issues. She was struggling with substance use. She was a teenager for most of it. kid.
Yeah, and I
And yet people say, you know, oh, it's somehow she's to blame for what happened to her, which is horrible.
I think that Nancy was a very troubled person in a time that wasn't very good at dealing with troubled people. You boil it down to its basic elements, and Nancy was looking for some sort of comfort, identity, some sort of home, and that search led her turning to drugs, and she became an addict. Whatever you think about her and her impact on Sid Vicious doesn't change the fact that this is a tragically sad story about a young woman who lost her life way too soon.
Mùa tới đã xin chào mi khi người yêu đã bỏ ta đi. Mùa tới đã xin chào mi khi tình yêu chớp cánh bay đi. Mùa tới ta đang lẻ loi. Mùa tới ta đang đơn côi. Mùa ơi, hãy đến bên ta để quên chuyện tình xót xa. Nếu trên đời tình ta ghé gọi một mình. Thank you. Xin chào mi. Hạnh phúc trong tầm với đã không còn tới khi vắng em trong đời. Tìm đến chân trời mới vẫn chung một thời, giờ đã xa ngàn khơi. Ngày đó ta lầm lỡ bỏ mặc nhau hững hờ để tiếng yêu rạng vỡ, rồi thời gian xoay mờ mãi vô tình đến bây giờ nhận ra hai đứa không còn nhau. Cuộc sống luôn vội vã với bao nghiệt ngã, sống quân ta mệt mỏi. Một bước chân trượt ngã đã trôi thật dài, lạc mất nhau ngày mai. Còn mãi không trời đâu mình gặp nhau lúc đầu, ngày tháng qua mong đó cùng niềm vui nỗi sầu, sẽ ghi lại biết bao điều để nhớ một thời ta đã yêu. Thì thôi ta đã lỡ lìa xa bên bờ, đời lạnh đành sóng vỗ buồn trôi lững lờ. Mình trong nỗi nhớ cho đến bao giờ mới quên ngày xưa. Thì thôi ta đã hết chờ nhau sẽ về, mùa xuân này đã chết vàng phai não nề, để lại bao muôn kia ghi khắc tên người gọi mãi trong đêm buồn. Hạnh phúc trong tầm với khi ta đã không còn tới khi vắng em trong đời. Tình đến chân trời mới vẫn thương một thời, giờ đã xa ngàn khơi. Ngày đó ta lầm lỡ bỏ mặc nhau hững đã trôi thật dài là mất nhau ngày mai. Còn má không trời đó mình gặp nhau lúc đầu, ngày tháng hoa mong đó một niềm vui nỗi sầu sẽ ghi lại biết bao điều để nhớ một thời ta đã yêu. Thôi ta đã lỡ lìa xa bên bờ, đời lạnh đầy sóng buồn trôi lững lờ, một mình trong nỗi nhớ cho đến bao giờ mình mới quên ngày xưa. Thì thôi ta đã thế chờ nhau sẽ về, mùa xuân này đã chết vang phai nao nề, để lại bao khói kia khi khắc tên người còn mãi trong đêm buồn.
Every day, shocking acts are caught on camera. Why are you naked? But these lawless individuals leave nothing to the imagination.
This dude is naked. It's nice. Hey, you got your pants on.
On this episode, disrobed and disorder in the streets.
That was intense. Like, what can I do in this moment?
A burglar gets personal.
He's sending a message that I pose a threat.
A small town's safety in jeopardy.
If somebody's prowling around my residence when they're naked like that, that's very disturbing to me.
And a suspect gets volatile with police.
Clearly the driver is not in the right state of mind.
Oscar Diaz and his cousin are working late to finish a job in the lobby of a Midtown Miami apartment complex.
It was about 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and all of a sudden a guy who lives in the apartment building runs in and he's like, call the cops, there's a naked man beating people up.
The lobby receptionist calls 911 while Oscar rushes outside to record what's going on.
Oh my God, it's really a naked man walking down the street.
What we see initially in Oscar's recording is a naked assailant punching and kicking a homeless gentleman.
He's just trying to grab the homeless guy, and the other guy's like, leave him alone.
Stop, go!
And he tries to help him a little bit. And at that point, they started getting closer, so I went behind a car, and I just kept filming behind the car, like to get out of the way.
Oscar didn't know it at the time. The man's naked, combative tirade started a few minutes earlier at a nearby gym.
It seemed like it was just a normal night at the gym. Out of nowhere, one of the gym members starts peeling off his clothes in the middle of one of the classes and then walks out onto the gym floor.
It doesn't go unnoticed. People are starting to have reactions to this nude person in the gym. Some are averting their eyes. The phones are coming out for some people.
It's not a laughing matter when the man not only gets naked, but turns violent.
When confronted, the nude man, it's almost like he's reverting back to being in boxing class. He takes a fighting stance and looks like he wants to box him.
I mean, this guy is violent. He's got fists flying. He's going crazy.
Several gym employees descend on the nude assailant and eventually get him under control.
The fact that it took several fully grown men to try to restrain this individual lets you know that something is going on here.
Employees eject the naked man from the gym, but the threat doesn't subside. This man has now been let loose on the unsuspecting streets of Midtown Miami.
This was a really bizarre, scary situation because he went from 0 to 60 out of nowhere, but it's about to get even more bizarre.
The guy in the white shirt can be seen trying to help the homeless man who's being pummeled by this naked individual.
Get the out of here, bro! Get the out of here!
So as he's trying to get him off of the homeless guy, he starts going after him instead. This guy was relentless. He was just like, no way, I'm beating you up, man. You should have never helped this guy.
Out of my Call the police! Call the police!
The scariest part for me was hearing this guy cry out for help. That was intense. He was scared for his life.
Call the police! Call the police!
Like, what I do in this moment? I know that we called the cops already. I'm getting him on video, so we have evidence of what happened.
Go call the cops.
They did already.
You shouldn't have stopped that guy too. Oh, where's the cop?
With 911 called and stunned bystanders awaiting their arrival, the naked man appears to run away. Or does he?
He's coming back.
And all of a sudden, he just started walking back towards us. At that point, my cousin was like, come inside, stay inside.
Jesus, dude, you okay, bro?
So we get inside of the lobby, and I keep filming, and as he's walking by, he's just screaming. There was no real rhyme or reason to why he was doing this. He just started screaming, my name is Freemason. My name is Freemason. He said it like 3 or 4 times, and then he just kind of disappeared into the night.
Though Oscar is seemingly safe, the naked perpetrator continues menacing the streets of Miami. After several minutes, relief finally arrives in the form of the Miami Police Department.
Going up to the cop.
An officer confronts the man, draws his taser, and fires a taser probes into him. Clearly, he didn't get a good connection because it has no effect at all. And the assailant continues to flee from the police. It's really, really escalating.
And then he's beating up a guy in a wheelchair, a defenseless man. This guy's naked. He's unafraid. You don't know what else can happen.
May 2023, Miami, Florida. Several minutes after being ejected from a local gym for stripping off his clothes, a naked man is still loose, causing havoc on the streets.
The guy continues on going down the street. He doesn't care at all. He's violent, so everybody around him, everybody witnessing this, has to know he's totally unpredictable.
After numerous people trying to stop this guy, they are finally able to get this nightmare to stop.
Eventually, they're able to get him into custody, get his hands behind his back and handcuff him, and take him away from the scene without causing any additional injury.
This naked man was on a rampage, and I'm sure there was a big sigh of relief when he was finally apprehended. If they hadn't stopped him, who knows what violence he might have done on someone.
It's surprising that no one else was hurt. I'm just flabbergasted at how he wasn't hurt, because after all, he was in a very vulnerable position himself.
I'm glad it didn't get any worse. When I knew everything was safe, relief came over me, and that's also when I kind of calmed down, because there was a lot of adrenaline running through me as well, witnessing all of this happening. The guy that lived at the apartment, I felt bad for him. In my opinion, he got the worst of it.
Yo, that's crazy, bro. He just beat some dude's ass.
The weird part was, after it all happened, life just kept going, putting up the chandelier. People are coming out of the apartment building. They're going about their life, and they have no idea that 10 seconds prior, some naked dude was out here beating people up. And that was just wild to me. How many things do I miss on a daily basis?
After a long week, Southeast Houston resident America Barrera is looking forward to a quiet night alone. Meanwhile, in the backyard, her motion sensor camera is triggered by a surprise visitor.
It's a Saturday night. We see a man jump across a fence into this woman's backyard. We see him scurry across the backyard, and he goes up to a very large window.
It's dark out. He's dressed in a skirt or dress that isn't exactly fitting right. And we see him smash the window.
After this perpetrator breaks the window, he climbs through the shards and makes his way inside the house.
Confronted with the burglar, America screams before running away to call police from a neighbor's.
Her scream scares the guy. But he doesn't leave empty-handed. Before he goes, he grabs a bunch of her clothes, including her underwear, and then runs out of the house.
He's wearing a skirt, but then he's largely nude otherwise. It's like, who is this guy? What is he going to do? It just really makes it all the more chilling.
Houston police respond and take America's statement. What she reveals is deeply disturbing.
She tells the arriving officers that this isn't the first time this gentleman has broken into her house.
According to America, the same man broke into her home 2 days earlier, and she has the video to prove it.
We see this same man approach the rear of the house to the same window, this time wearing a bathrobe, breaks the glass, and enters the home.
Luckily on this occasion, America was not home, but the man takes full advantage of the empty house.
He stays for a while. He has a beer, he has a little something to eat, takes her shotgun and some clothing, and left a knife in her bed.
There's messaging going on here. Essentially, he's taking away her protection, and he's sending a message that I pose a threat.
Now that this has happened twice with the same perpetrator, you have to wonder, is he obsessed with this woman? Has he been stalking her? Is he watching her at all times?
It becomes apparent to the officers that they may know who this individual is, and he's a local transient, a homeless person who frequents that area.
America interviews with the local news, but is too afraid to appear on camera.
He's roaming around. The cops know he's roaming around. I asked, well, if I drive around and I find him and I call you, can you arrest him? And they told me no, because the judge has to sign the warrant.
Officers say they think they know who this individual is, and yet he remains at large.
I totally feel for this homeowner. I would not feel safe in this home. As inconvenient as it might be, I would seriously consider moving out of this home. There's no stopping him, unless he's finally arrested and is locked up.
Getting woken up in the middle of the night by a prowler is terrifying.
That's sort of saying, I've been here, and I don't know if or when I'll be back.
The officer is treating this as a high-risk stop, but I don't think he had any idea what he was getting into when the person exited the vehicle.
Metter, Georgia is a quaint little town, and everybody knows everybody. It's the kind of place where you usually keep your doors unlocked.
We have very little violent crime. There's not much that really goes on. During the week time, we'll go days without getting a single call at night.
But on April Fool's Day 2023, Metter police received several disturbing calls that shatter its residents' sense of security.
The very first call we got was to a residence to an elderly couple that was home asleep and heard a commotion and looked up, and it was a slender black male.
Getting woken up in the middle of the night by a prowler is terrifying. What's going on? How do I deal with this threat?
He made a grunting sound, and then he ran out the door, followed by the homeowner, who chased him out with a shotgun.
After fleeing the first residence, the man hits 4 more houses, and what the security video reveals turns the case from unsettling to truly bizarre.
They reviewed their video camera, and they saw a naked black male with something wrapped around his head.
This is something you don't expect to see in a small town like this. A guy traipsing around yards of homes naked trying to break in.
If somebody's just prowling around my residence, that's one thing. But when they're naked like that, that's very disturbing to me.
Even more disturbing, the nude burglar's MO seems to be more about sending a message to the residents rather than acquiring their belongings.
All he does is pick up little trinkets with every house he goes into. And then he moves those trinkets from one location to another location.
There was a residence where several things were stolen, and then a day later found a trash bag at another residence that he had been at that had the remaining items that he had taken from that house.
That's sort of saying, I've been here, I've gone through here, and I've left here.
Despite boldly exposing some parts of himself, the man makes sure to cover his face, making identification difficult for Metter PD.
It's extremely frustrating when you can't get the facial features to identify somebody. You have to rely on the body type, which most people don't see people in a naked state.
Then, a week later, fears intensify when the burglar in the buff strikes again.
We get another call from a residence. They heard something that awoke them, and they looked at their camera, and in that video camera they saw a naked black male with something wrapped around his head. And he was loitering and prowling around. Since we had video evidence from the week earlier, when we compared the two, we knew that it was going to be the same person.
This kind of behavior escalates, and he's starting to feel familiar, and the Or he gets to know the landscape. Who knows who will be next?
In Metter, Georgia, a nude burglar has struck 2 Saturdays in a row. Determined to protect their citizens from him, the town's law enforcement sets up a sting.
I figured that we needed to take every precaution we could to try to curb this before it got violent. One of the local car dealerships allowed us to borrow a bunch of cars, and so we put people basically undercover in the homeowners' areas. We sat in driveways and alleyways to try to wait and just sit and take.
All these assets to try to stop this guy from terrorizing his community. And they never catch him, and it never happens again. But maybe that was the deterrent. The guy very well may have known that there was going to be a big operation to try to catch him, and he could have just thrown in the towel.
It's still an active case. Even today, they're still working on a suspect. They're conducting interviews, anything that we can get out of this to try to tie somebody to this crime.
Northeastern Ohio, 3:55 a.m., and the Geauga County Sheriff's Office has a dire threat on its hands. A vehicle traveling at nearly 120 miles per hour.
Officers are drawn to this vehicle who's driving at a very high rate of speed, and they don't stop or slow down when they see the officers.
Going that fast is not only a speeding citation, but it's also driving to endanger. At those speeds, you can't brake properly, you can't maneuver your car, you can't avoid obstacles. So the public, the driver, and the officer are all in danger with these kinds of speeds. Clearly, the driver is not in the right state of mind.
In order to get this driver to stop, officers have to deploy the spike strips. Finally, one of those pops the front tire on the car, and then the driver finally pulls over and then stops.
We're just east of the reservoir, Pennsylvania plate. We're going to be on a silver Mazda.
Without being told to, the driver starts to get out of the car.
Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands right now!
The officer is treating this as a high-risk stop, but I don't think he had any idea what he was getting into when the person exited the vehicle.
Step out of the vehicle!
The driver gets out, clad only in a see-through tube top and G-string.
Walk back towards my voice. Do it now. Walk back toward me. Walk back towards me. Do it now. Walk back here. Walk back.
It's not every day that you pull over a woman driving 128 miles an hour and she's pretty much naked. There is a shock factor to that, even for a police officer who's seen it all.
Is there anybody else in that car? Is there anyone else in that car? No. Don't move. I'm not moving, okay?
The woman is handcuffed and placed in the back seat of the squad car, but she refuses to get fully inside.
Somebody talk to me right now, please. I'm here, I'm talking. I know I ain't got no license, okay? And I know I'm not right.
At this point, it's clearly evident that this driver is intoxicated, which makes her driving from earlier even more dangerous, even lethal.
I will, but you're not listening to me. You're not talking to me. Put your feet in.
Once, though, she's in the back, she goes onto a full-on hissy fit and starts bashing her head against the partition window between the front seat and the back seat, and then kicking at it.
What I'm thinking about, she's in the back of my car, is what's going to be next from this person? How bad is this going to get?
Police transport the belligerent woman to the Geauga County Safety Center. She is identified as Erin Holdsworth and charged with 7 counts, including operating a vehicle while intoxicated and fleeing and eluding authorities. Holdsworth is convicted on 3 of the 7 charges and sentenced to 180 days in jail.
Had the officers not been able to pull this woman over, somebody would have died that night. I commend these police officers for stopping her in her tracks.
Next time on Exposed Naked Crimes.
Get behind your back.
It's something out of a horror movie. What happened to this guy?
This dude is butt.
This could be seriously deadly.
Holy. Get on the ground now! She's also naked, which is a whole nother part of this equation.